This video is about how the words that we use creates our experience. It's also a little bit about public speaking as well, so stick around if either of those two areas interests you. I just want to start though with a little story of something that happened to me yesterday. I went to see my accountant first thing, and as I got there, the building that she works in was being evacuated. It turned out that a broom had fallen over the weekend in the maintenance cupboard, and it had fallen against the tap, and the tap had been running for the whole weekend. So the whole of the upstairs floor of this building was flooded, and in the offices downstairs the ceilings were bowed under the weight of the water. So first of all they had to call in the fire brigade to turn off the power because it wasn't safe for anyone to go into the power cabinet. But also they needed to get a structural engineering to make sure that the building's safe. I'll come back to that story in a few minutes. I'm making this video for a friend, but hopefully it's going to be general enough that it'll be useful to you as well. I went to a seminar at the weekend. My friend was speaking there. She did a great job. And then when we were chatting afterwards, I picked up on something in her language, and this video is the result of that. Do you remember recently I did a video that I think I called it the butt swap pattern, and it was talking about when we say something positive, if we say something negative immediately afterwards, it's like the negative overwrites the positive, and that's what we're left with. So when we were chatting, my friend said, I used to get really nervous when I was speaking, but I'm getting a lot better now. And that was a perfect thing to say. That's absolutely fantastic language if she'd left it there. But she tagged something else on the end and said, I usually get nervous just standing up and saying my own name. And that's the bit that I've picked up on here. If I was to say I got nervous when I stood up and said my own name last Thursday at 7 o'clock, we're pinning that nervousness down to a specific moment in time. If we say I usually get nervous when I stand up and say my own name, the word usually doesn't exist at any particular point in time. It always exists. It exists in the past, the present and the future. So by saying I usually get nervous when I stand up and say my own name, it's just like saying I always get nervous, or we could even be saying I'm going to get nervous in the future when I stand up and say my own name. Am I being picky? Yes, I am. Is this stuff important? Yes, it is. Think back to that dripping tap. If it had been dripping for 5 minutes, it's not a problem. When it's been on for the whole weekend, it could potentially condemn that building. If we say something to ourselves once, that's okay. If we say something to ourselves over and over again, we are literally programming our subconscious mind and creating our experience. So what can we do here? Simple answer is change the language. If my friend had said, I used to get nervous speaking in public, but I'm getting a lot better now, that's perfect, because that implies that progress is being made, and it implies that progress will keep being made. So all we need to do is subtly change that language, perhaps to say, I'm getting better at public speaking, or I'm managing my emotions well. And then once we get comfortable with that, we can take it a step further and maybe say something like, I'm starting to enjoy this. And we can just keep making it more and more positive, all the way up until I'm an awesome public speaker. Now, you perhaps don't want to say that out loud to other people, but actually it's a great thing to be saying to yourself. It's also about what you say to yourself afterwards. Ever heard anybody say something like, wow, I really hated that. That was the worst experience of my life. I hope I never have to go through that again. And what are they setting themselves up for next time? What if instead you said something more positive like, wow, that was tough, but I did it. I really pushed myself that time. I'm really pleased with myself. Or, that was the first time I've done it and I was really nervous, but I'm going to get better each time that I do it from now. I'm not going to keep feeding you lines here because you can come up with these yourself. These days I do quite a lot of public speaking. I've been going to a speaking group for about 7 years now. I've had quite a lot of experience. I used to hate it, and these days I really enjoy doing it. Before I go on, first of all, my hands are sweating pretty much every time, and it's not unusual for my hands to be physically shaking as well. And that's caused by adrenaline. But what's important is what I tell myself about that. And there's a great story that underlines this by a guy called Roger Love, he's a singing coach to the top professionals and a speaking coach to a lot of public figures as well. And he tells a story that he was coaching Bruce Springsteen and he was coaching Barbra Streisand. And at that time, Barbara Streisand hadn't done a live gig for about 20 years. And he asked her, what is it like before you go on stage? And she said, before I go on stage, my hands are sweating, my hands are shaking, my arms are tense, my shoulders are tense, and it's like I've got this big knot in my stomach, and I just know that I can't go on because I'm not going to be able to do it. And he asked Bruce Springsteen, Bruce, what's it like before you go on stage? And he said, my hands are sweating, my hands shake a little bit, my arms are tense, my shoulders are tense, and I've got this big knot in my stomach. And I just know that that excitement means that I'm going to have the best gig that I've ever had. Be careful with the words that you use, because the words that you use are what creates your experience.